August 9, 1945, 1100 hours, Imperial Palace, Tokyo. Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo stood in the darkened conference room watching footage that made no sense according to everything he understood about explosive weapons, military capabilities, and the physical limits of what human technology could achieve. American reconnaissance film, captured from a B-29 that had been shot down over Tokyo, showed a mushroom cloud rising over Hiroshima 4 days earlier on August 6th. The cloud extended upward beyond the camera's frame, reaching altitudes that exceeded any conventional explosion Togo had witnessed during 3 years of air raids on Japanese cities. The footage showed a flash brighter than the sun, a shockwave visible as it propagated outward from ground zero. And then the characteristic mushroom shape that seemed impossible for any bomb to create. The projector's mechanical whir filled the silence as Japan's Supreme War Council, the 6 most powerful men in Japanese government, watched footage that American leaflets dropped over Tokyo claimed showed a new type of bomb with explosive power equivalent to 20,000 tons of TNT. The leaflets warned that more such bombs would be dropped on Japanese cities unless Japan surrendered immediately. They claimed one bomb had destroyed an entire city. They stated that continuing resistance was futile against a weapon that made traditional defenses obsolete. Togo had dismissed the leaflets as propaganda when they first appeared. American claims seemed physically impossible. No single bomb could destroy an entire city. The largest conventional bombs America possessed contained perhaps 10 tons of explosives. Claims of 20,000-ton equivalent seemed like transparent exaggeration designed to induce panic. But the footage suggested something different had occurred at Hiroshima, something that didn't match patterns from conventional bombing raids Togo had witnessed in dozens of Japanese cities. Think about that moment. August 9th, 1945. Japan's leadership faced decision about whether to surrender or continue fighting despite losing every major battle for past 2 years, despite losing air superiority completely, despite American naval blockade starving the home islands, despite Soviet Union declaring war that morning and invading Manchuria with overwhelming force. And now they confronted footage suggesting Americans possessed weapon that could destroy cities with single bomb, weapon that, if real, would make continued resistance literally suicidal. What Togo didn't know as he watched the footage was that while he and the Supreme War Council deliberated in the Imperial Palace conference room, American bombers were approaching Nagasaki, 250 miles southwest, carrying a second atomic bomb that would detonate in approximately 2 hours. That Japan's leadership was debating whether the Hiroshima bomb was real or propaganda at exact moment when second bomb was about to prove the weapon was real and America possessed multiple weapons. That their debate would be resolved not through analysis but through second demonstration that would occur before they finished discussing the first. What Togo didn't know was that among the 6 Supreme War Council members watching the footage, 3 would argue for continuing war even after seeing evidence of atomic bombs' power. That War Minister General Anami would insist footage was fabricated propaganda and that even if Hiroshima bomb was real, America couldn't possibly possess multiple weapons. That Army Chief of Staff General Yoshijiro Umezu would argue that accepting surrender terms was more dangerous than continued war, regardless of atomic bombs. That Navy Chief of Staff Admiral Toyoda would claim Japanese military could withstand atomic attacks and still defend home islands successfully. What Togo didn't know was that his faction, favoring immediate surrender, would ultimately prevail not through persuasion, but through emperor's unprecedented intervention overruling military leadership. That Emperor Hirohito would cite atomic bombs specifically as justification for surrender, stating that continuing war against weapon that could destroy Japanese race was unacceptable regardless of military's confidence in continued resistance. that atomic bombs would provide political cover for surrender by creating external explanation for defeat that preserved military's honor. What Togo didn't know was that 40 years later, in 1985, he would publish memoir describing this screening and the debate that followed. That his memoir would reveal Supreme War Council had been divided, not about whether to surrender, but about what terms were acceptable, with military faction demanding terms preserving their power, while civilian faction recognized any terms were better than national annihilation. That atomic bombs had shifted debate, not by making surrender seem necessary, but by making military's position seem insane. What Togo didn't know was that American decision to drop atomic bombs rather than invade Japan. Operation Downfall would have required 1.7 million American troops, with estimated casualties exceeding 500,000, had been influenced by experience of capturing Okinawa, where Japanese military and civilians fought to death rather than surrender. That American leadership concluded invasion would result in millions of Japanese casualties as military forced civilians to resist. That atomic bombs offered possibility of ending war without invasion that would devastate Japanese population more thoroughly than bombs did. What Togo didn't know was that the footage he was watching, reconnaissance film from observation aircraft accompanying the bombing mission, would become historical record documenting moment when warfare entered atomic age. That the mushroom cloud image would become symbol recognized globally, representing power so devastating that possessing it made using it almost unthinkable. That paradox of weapon too terrible to use but too powerful to abandon would define military strategy for rest of century. What Togo didn't know was that debate in that conference room represented collision between two worldviews. Military faction believing honor required fighting to death regardless of odds. Civilian faction believing preservation of Japanese people required accepting defeat. That atomic bombs would tip balance towards civilian faction, not by convincing military their position was wrong, but by giving emperor justification for overruling them based on existential threat to Japanese race. The mathematics of surrender were being written in mushroom cloud footage and casualty estimates and strategic calculations about whether national honor was worth national extinction. And those mathematics were proving something that would reshape post-war Japan. That sometimes survival requires accepting defeat. That preserving population matters more than preserving military's pride. That emperor's role was protecting Japanese people even when protecting them meant overruling military leadership that couldn't accept surrender. By the time the projector finished showing the footage at 11:15 hours and lights came up revealing Supreme War Council members' faces, the debate about how to respond to atomic bombs had already begun. War Minister Anami would insist footage was propaganda. Foreign Minister Togo would argue surrender was now urgent. And while they debated, the second atomic bomb was falling toward Nagasaki, proving that America's threat was real and the time for debate had expired. August 6th, 1945. 8:15 hours. Meanwhile, over Hiroshima, at the moment when atomic bomb detonated 1,900 feet above city, Colonel Paul Tibbets, flying the B-29 Enola Gay, witnessed explosion that would provide footage Japan's leadership would watch 3 days later. Tibbets' mission report, filed August 6, 1945, preserved at National Archives, documented the bombing with clinical precision that contrasted sharply with unprecedented nature of weapon being used. The report stated that Enola Gay released atomic bomb designated Little Boy at 8:15 hours local time from altitude of 31,000 feet. According to the report, Bombardier Major Thomas Ferraby achieved targeting accuracy within 550 feet of designated aiming point, Aioi Bridge in central Hiroshima. The report noted that after bomb release, Tibbets executed 155-degree diving turn to escape blast radius, gaining distance from detonation point as quickly as possible. The report documented detonation at 8:16:02 hours, according to instruments. According to the report, bright flash visible even through protective goggles. Shockwave hit aircraft 43 seconds after detonation, despite being 11.5 miles from ground zero. Aircraft experienced turbulence equivalent to moderate anti-aircraft fire, though no flak was present. Tail gunner reported mushroom cloud rising rapidly through 40,000 feet and continuing to rise beyond our operational ceiling. Most significantly, the report described visible effects according to observations from crew. The report stated, "City of Hiroshima disappeared beneath smoke and dust cloud within seconds of detonation. Fires visible across entire city area. Destruction appeared complete within 2-mile radius of detonation point. No conventional bomb pattern visible. Destruction was radial from single point rather than linear from multiple bombs. Scale of destruction exceeded any conventional raid we have observed." August the 6th to 8th, 1945. Shigenori Togo's memoir, published in 1985, titled "The Decision That Saved Japan," described the confusion and denial that characterized Japanese leadership's response to Hiroshima bombing during first 3 days, when information was fragmentary and military-insisted reports were exaggerated. The memoir stated that Togo first learned about Hiroshima through military communications on evening of August 6th. According to the memoir, initial reports stated that Hiroshima had been attacked by small number of B-29s, perhaps 1 to 3 aircraft, using new type of bomb. Reports indicated extensive damage across entire city, but provided no specifics about bomb type or yield. Military communications emphasized small number of attacking aircraft as if this somehow diminished threat. I was immediately suspicious because destroying entire city with 1 to 3 aircraft suggested weapon fundamentally different from conventional bombs. The memoir documented that Togo requested detailed information from military on August 7th, but received only fragmented reports according to published account. The memoir stated, "Military was withholding information or genuinely didn't understand what had occurred. Reports mentioned unusual flash, tremendous heat, and single explosion destroying buildings across miles." But military insisted this could be explained as massive conventional bomb or multiple bombs dropped simultaneously. They refused to acknowledge possibility of atomic weapon, despite American leaflets claiming atomic bomb had been used. Most significantly, the memoir described receiving American leaflets on August 8th, claiming Hiroshima had been destroyed by atomic bomb. According to published account, leaflets provided technical details about bomb, including yield equivalent to 20,000 tons of TNT and warning that additional atomic bombs would be dropped on Japanese cities if we didn't surrender immediately. Military dismissed leaflets as propaganda. War Minister Anami stated Americans couldn't possibly possess multiple atomic bombs and that claims about single bomb destroying entire city were obvious exaggerations. I was less certain. American technical descriptions seemed too specific to be fabrication. August 9th, 1945, 1100 hours. Togo's memoir described Supreme War Council screening of American reconnaissance footage on morning of August 9th, with detail that captured both visual impact of footage and divided response from council members. According to the memoir, Foreign Ministry obtained footage through channels Togo didn't fully explain, likely captured from downed B-29 or leaked through neutral diplomats. The memoir stated, "I requested urgent Supreme War Council meeting to review footage and discuss surrender. Meeting convened at 1100 hours in Imperial Palace conference room. Present were myself, Prime Minister Kantaro Suzuki, War Minister General Anami, Army Chief of Staff General Umezu, Navy Chief of Staff Admiral Toyoda, and Navy Minister Admiral Mitsumasa Yonai. Emperor was not present. Protocol required we brief him after reaching consensus." The memoir documented that footage showed Hiroshima explosion from multiple angles captured by observation aircraft. According to published account, film showed initial flash so bright it overexposed camera briefly. Then shockwave visible as concentric circles expanding from detonation point. Then mushroom cloud formation, rising rapidly to extraordinary altitude. City disappeared beneath smoke cloud. Scale was unlike anything any of us had witnessed during 3 years of conventional bombing raids. Even on film, power was evident. Most significantly, the memoir described immediate reactions according to published account. Togo stated, "Prime Minister Suzuki was silent. Expressions suggested deep concern. Navy Minister Yonai appeared shaken, but War Minister Anami spoke first, claiming footage was fabricated propaganda. He insisted Americans had created fake film using miniatures and special effects to make conventional bombing appear more destructive." General Umezu supported this assessment, stating footage showed technically impossible explosion that violated known physics. Admiral Toyoda was less dismissive, but questioned whether America possessed multiple such weapons, even if Hiroshima bomb was real. August 9th, 1945, 11:30 hours. Togo's memoir described the debate following footage screening with detail, revealing fundamental divide between civilian faction recognizing necessity of surrender and military faction refusing to accept defeat, regardless of circumstances. According to the memoir, Togo argued that atomic bomb, if real, made continued resistance suicidal. The memoir stated, "I told counsel that regardless of whether footage showed atomic bomb or super powerful conventional weapon, result was same. Americans possessed capability to destroy Japanese cities with single aircraft. Our air defenses couldn't stop high-altitude B-29 raids. If Americans could destroy one city per day with single aircraft, they could annihilate Japan's urban population within months. Continued resistance under these circumstances was national suicide." The memoir documented War Minister Anami's response according to published account. The memoir stated, "Anami insisted footage was propaganda and that even if Hiroshima bomb was real, Americans couldn't possess many such weapons. He claimed we should continue fighting because accepting unconditional surrender was more dangerous than American bombing." He argued that military could still defend home islands and inflict such casualties on invasion forces that Americans would negotiate favorable peace terms. Atomic bombs didn't change this calculation because our strategy never depended on defending cities. It depended on making invasion too costly for Americans to accept. Most significantly, the memoir revealed the fundamental philosophical divide, according to published account. Togo stated, "Anami represented military worldview where honor required fighting to death regardless of odds. To military, surrender was ultimate disgrace that dishonored entire nation. They genuinely believed dying in battle was preferable to living under occupation. I represented civilian worldview where preserving Japanese people mattered more than military honor. I believe surviving as conquered people was preferable to extinction as proud people. Atomic bombs hadn't created this divide, they exposed it. We were debating whether national honor was worth national extinction." August 9th, 1945, 11:45 hours. Togo's memoir described the moment when military aid interrupted Supreme War Council meeting to report that second city, Nagasaki, had been bombed, proving Americans possessed multiple atomic weapons and that time for debate had expired. According to the memoir, aide entered conference room at approximately 11:45 hours and whispered report to General Umezu. The memoir stated, Umezu's expression changed immediately. He requested permission to interrupt meeting with urgent military intelligence. He informed us that Nagasaki had been bombed at 11:02 hours, approximately 45 minutes earlier, by what appeared to be atomic bomb based on initial reports describing mushroom cloud and extensive destruction. Second bomb proved Americans possessed multiple weapons and were willing to use them. The memoir documented immediate impact on debate according to published account. The memoir stated, War Minister Anami looked stunned. His primary argument, that Americans possessed only one atomic bomb, had been disproven. Navy Minister Yonai stated quietly that continuation was now impossible. Prime Minister Suzuki suggested we must accept Potsdam Declaration immediately, but Anami recovered quickly and insisted we should still negotiate terms. He argued that Americans using second bomb proved they were desperate and that we could extract concessions by threatening continued resistance, forcing them to use additional bombs they might not possess. Most significantly, the memoir revealed that even confronted with evidence of multiple atomic bombs, military faction refused to accept unconditional surrender. According to published account, I realized that no amount of evidence would convince military to surrender unconditionally. They would argue for continued resistance even if Americans dropped atomic bomb on Tokyo during our meeting. Their worldview didn't allow accepting defeat. Only Emperor could overrule them. I requested immediate audience with Emperor to brief him on atomic bombs and request his intervention. August 9th, 1945. 2300 hours. Meanwhile, in underground bunker beneath Imperial Palace, Emperor Hirohito convened extraordinary Imperial Conference to make final decision about surrender after Supreme War Council remained deadlocked despite evidence of atomic bombs. Prime Minister Suzuki's diary entries from August 9-10, preserved in archives and published posthumously, documented the Imperial Conference that would result in Emperor's unprecedented intervention in political decision-making. The diary stated that Imperial Conference convened at 2300 hours on August 9th. According to the diary, Emperor listened to presentations from both factions. Togo argued for immediate acceptance of Potsdam Declaration, citing Soviet invasion of Manchuria and atomic bombs as making continued resistance impossible. Anami argued for negotiating better terms, citing military's confidence, inability to defend home islands, and inflict unacceptable casualties on invasion forces. The diary documented that after hearing arguments, Emperor made statement unprecedented in modern Japanese history. According to the diary, Emperor stated that continuing war was impossible. He cited three factors. Military situation was desperate, with no prospect of improvement. Soviet entry into war eliminated hope of negotiated peace through Moscow, and atomic bombs represented threat to Japanese race that couldn't be countered. He stated that preserving Kokutai, national essence, required accepting Potsdam Declaration and ending war immediately. Most significantly, the diary noted Emperor's specific reference to atomic bombs. According to the diary, Emperor stated that atomic bombs made continued resistance unconscionable. He said military had assured him they could defend home islands against invasion, but military had no defense against atomic bombs. If Americans could destroy Japanese cities one by one with single aircraft, Japanese race would cease to exist. His duty as emperor was preserving Japanese people. Continuing war when it meant extinction was contrary to his sacred responsibility. Therefore, he ordered acceptance of Potsdam Declaration immediately. August 10th, 1945. Foreign Ministry cable to Switzerland dated August 10, 1945, preserved at National Archives, documented Japan's acceptance of Potsdam Declaration with condition that Emperor's status be preserved, acceptance that would end Pacific War. The cable stated, according to archives, Japanese government is ready to accept terms of Potsdam Declaration with understanding that said declaration does not comprise any demand which prejudices prerogatives of His Majesty as sovereign ruler. Japanese government earnestly hopes that this understanding is warranted and desires immediate notification of views of Allied powers on this point. The cable represented compromise between military faction demanding conditions and civilian faction recognizing unconditional surrender was necessary. By framing emperor's status as understanding rather than condition, cable allowed both factions to claim they'd achieved their objectives. Military could claim they'd preserved emperor. Civilians could claim they'd accepted Potsdam terms. Foreign Ministry records preserved in archives documented that cable was transmitted through Swiss diplomatic channels at 700 hours August 10th. The records noted that transmission included request for immediate response because military faction might attempt to reverse surrender decision if Allied response was delayed or unsatisfactory. August 14th, 1945. Meanwhile, during August 10th, 14, while Japan awaited Allied response to acceptance cable, military faction made final attempts to prevent surrender despite Emperor's decision. War Minister Anami's diary entries from August 10, 14, discovered after his suicide and preserved in archives, revealed military leadership's struggle to accept surrender even after Emperor's decision. The diary stated on August 10th, according to preserved entries, "Emperor has decided to surrender. I cannot accept this decision, but must obey Emperor's command. However, I can still work to ensure terms preserve military honor and prevent occupation that would humiliate Japan. I will advocate for conditions that allow Japan to disarm itself, try war criminals in Japanese courts, and limit occupation to minimum necessary for peace treaty implementation." The diary documented on August 12th that military faction considered coup attempt to prevent surrender. According to preserved entries, some officers propose seizing Emperor and preventing surrender broadcast. They argue Emperor has been misled by civilian advisors and that military duty requires protecting Emperor from making decision he will regret. I have refused to support coup attempt because directly opposing Emperor's will is contrary to everything military stands for. But I sympathize with their position. Surrender will dishonor everything we fought for. Most significantly, the diary entry from August 14th, day of final surrender decision, revealed Anami's personal torment. According to preserved entry, Emperor has commanded surrender be announced tomorrow. I can no longer prevent it. I have failed in my duty to defend Japan. I have dishonored military and Emperor by accepting surrender while military remains capable of fighting. I can only restore honor through final act demonstrating my opposition to surrender. Tonight, I will commit seppuku as protest against surrender and as atonement for my failure to prevent it. August 14th, 1945. NHK radio technical logs from August 14th, 1945, preserved at NHK archives, documented Emperor's recording of surrender announcement, recording that required 2 takes because first was interrupted by air raid warning. The logs stated that Emperor arrived at NHK studios at 2300 hours on August 14th. According to the logs, recording was scheduled for midnight, but was delayed when air raid sirens sounded at 23:30 hours warning of approaching B-29s. The logs noted, Emperor remained calm during air raid alert. He stated that making recording was urgent regardless of bombing raid. Recording proceeded during all clear at 23:50 hours. The logs documented that first recording attempt was interrupted according to technical notes. The logs stated, Emperor completed reading surrender announcement at 00:05 hours August 15th. However, recording engineer noted technical problems with audio quality. Second recording was necessary. Emperor agreed to record again immediately. Second recording completed at 00:20 hours August 15th with acceptable audio quality. The logs preserved Emperor's actual recorded words according to transcript. The surrender announcement stated, "To our good and loyal subjects, after pondering deeply the general trends of the world and actual conditions obtaining in our empire today, we have decided to effect settlement of present situation by resorting to extraordinary measure. We have ordered our government to communicate to governments of United States, Great Britain, China, and Soviet Union that our empire accepts provisions of their joint declaration. Most significantly, the announcement explicitly cited atomic bombs as justification for surrender, according to preserved transcript. Moreover, enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, power of which to do damage is indeed incalculable, taking toll of many innocent lives. Should we continue to fight, it would not only result in ultimate collapse and obliteration of Japanese nation, but also it would lead to total extinction of human civilization. Such being case, how are we to save millions of our subjects, or to atone ourselves before hallowed spirits of our imperial ancestors? This is reason why we have ordered acceptance of provisions of Joint Declaration of Powers. August 15th, 1945. Hiroshi Takahashi's diary entry from August 15, 1945, preserved in published collection of civilian diaries from war's end, documented listening to Emperor's surrender broadcast and public reaction, demonstrating that atomic bombs had provided acceptable explanation for defeat. The diary entry stated that Takahashi listened to broadcast at noon on August 15th. According to the entry, Emperor's voice was difficult to understand. He spoke in formal court language unfamiliar to common people, but meaning was clear. War was ending. Japan was surrendering. Emperor cited cruel bomb as reason. He said continuing would lead to extinction of Japanese race. This explanation made surrender acceptable. We weren't surrendering because we lacked courage or because our military had failed. We were surrendering because Americans possessed weapon that could annihilate us. This preserved our honor while accepting defeat. The diary documented public reaction in Tokyo, according to the entry. Takahashi stated, "Many people wept, some were relieved. War was finally ending. Others were devastated. Everything we'd suffered was for nothing. But most accepted surrender because Emperor commanded it, and because atomic bombs provided explanation that preserved honor. If we'd surrendered after conventional defeats, it would have dishonored military and nation. But surrendering to prevent atomic annihilation was rational rather than cowardly." Most significantly, the diary noted that atomic bombs changed narrative about defeat. According to the entry, newspapers and radio immediately emphasized atomic bombs in explaining surrender. They described bombs as unprecedented weapon that no nation could defend against. They stated that Americans' technological superiority had been overwhelming and that continuing against such weapons would have been suicide. This narrative made defeat acceptable. We hadn't been defeated by superior courage or tactics. We'd been defeated by scientific advancement we couldn't match. This was less shameful than admitting conventional military defeat. August 15th, 1945, 0400 hours. War Minister Anami's suicide note discovered with his body on morning of August 15th, preserved in archives, revealed his final protest against surrender and military factions' inability to accept defeat even facing national extinction. The suicide note stated, according to preserved text, "Believing firmly that our sacred land shall never perish, I, with my death, humbly apologize to the Emperor for the great crime." The note was dated August 15th, 0400 hours, 8 hours before Emperor's surrender broadcast would air. Military police report documenting discovery of Anami's body stated that Anami had committed ritual suicide by seppuku between 0200 and 0300 hours on August 15th. According to the report, Anami's body was discovered at 0630 hours by his adjutant. The report noted, War Minister appeared to have performed seppuku in traditional manner, disembowelment followed by decapitation by assistant. Death appears to have occurred approximately 3 to 4 hours before discovery. The report documented that Anami left 2 additional documents beyond suicide note. According to the report, one document was letter to Emperor apologizing for failing to defend Japan successfully. Second document was message to military stating, "I believe in Japan's sacred indestructibility. The spirit of the Special Attack Forces, kamikaze, will help our nation surmount this crisis. I have full confidence that our posterity will solve this national difficulty. Do not forget that I die believing in the eternity of Japan. September 1945. General Douglas MacArthur's arrival in Japan on August 30, 1945, and subsequent occupation, documented in Supreme Commander Allied Powers reports preserved at archives, revealed how atomic bombs had transformed Japan's attitude toward occupation from anticipated resistance to acceptance. ESCAP Intelligence Assessment dated September 15, 1945, analyzed Japanese public opinion about occupation. The assessment stated that Japanese population was surprisingly cooperative with occupation forces. According to the assessment, initial concerns about resistance and sabotage have proven unfounded. Japanese population appears resigned to occupation and willing to cooperate with American authorities. This cooperation exceeds expectations given intensity of wartime propaganda about American brutality. The assessment attributed cooperation partly to atomic bombs according to archives. The report stated, atomic bombs provided psychological shock that broke Japanese will to resist. Population believes resistance is futile against nation possessing such weapons. More significantly, atomic bombs provided narrative that made defeat acceptable. Japanese can tell themselves they weren't defeated by inferior enemies, but by technological advancement that no nation could counter. This narrative preserves honor while accepting reality of defeat. Most significantly, the assessment noted that Emperor's explicit citation of atomic bombs as justification for surrender had legitimized cooperation with occupation. According to the report, Emperor stated in surrender broadcast that atomic bombs represented unprecedented threat, requiring surrender to prevent Japanese extinction. This imperial explanation makes cooperation with occupation compatible with loyalty to Emperor. Japanese can cooperate with Americans while maintaining they are following Emperor's command to accept occupation as means of preserving Japanese people. 1985. Shigenori Togo's memoir, published in 1985, 40 years after witnessing Supreme War Council's debate about atomic bombs, provided retrospective analysis of how bombs had affected surrender decision and what they meant for post-war Japan. The memoir's assessment of atomic bombs' role stated, according to published text, atomic bombs did not make Supreme War Council suddenly realize continuation was impossible. We already knew Japan had lost war by August 1945. What atomic bombs did was provide political cover for surrender by creating external explanation for defeat that preserved military honor. Without atomic bombs, military faction would have continued demanding we fight to death rather than accept unconditional surrender. With atomic bombs, Emperor could justify surrender as necessary to prevent Japanese extinction, justification that military couldn't argue against without appearing to advocate national suicide. The memoir analyzed counterfactual scenario without atomic bombs, according to published account. Togo stated, "If atomic bombs hadn't been used, I believe Japan would have continued fighting through August and September 1945, while military hoped for negotiated settlement. American invasion would have been necessary, probably in November 1945. Invasion would have resulted in millions of Japanese casualties as military forced civilians to resist. Atomic bombs prevented this by providing decisive demonstration that resistance was futile. Paradoxically, weapons that killed 200,000 people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki likely saved millions by preventing invasion. Most significantly, the memoir addressed moral complexity of atomic bombs, according to published text. Togo stated, "I am asked whether I believe atomic bombs were justified. This is a difficult question for survivor to answer. Bombs caused tremendous suffering to innocent people. but they also ended war that was causing tremendous suffering to millions across Asia and Pacific. They prevented invasion that would have killed more people, both Japanese and American, than bombs did. They demonstrated power so terrible that it has prevented use of nuclear weapons since 1945. I cannot say I am glad bombs were used, but I must acknowledge they may have been necessary evil that prevented greater evil. Historical debate about atomic bombs' necessity continued for decades, according to scholarly literature, with historians divided about whether bombs were essential for ending war or whether Japan would have surrendered without them. Traditionalist argument preserved in official histories maintained that atomic bombs were necessary to end war without invasion that would have cost millions of casualties. According to this view, Japanese military leadership was prepared to fight to death despite impossible strategic situation, and only atomic bombs' demonstration of power capable of annihilating Japan convinced Emperor to override military and order surrender. Revisionist argument developed by historians in 1960s, 1970s contended that Japan was already preparing to surrender before atomic bombs, and that bombs were unnecessary for ending war. According to this view, Soviet entry into war on August 9th was a more significant factor in Japan's surrender than atomic bombs, because Soviet invasion eliminated hope of negotiated peace through Moscow and made continued resistance strategically pointless. Recent scholarship synthesizing evidence from Japanese archives suggested complex reality where multiple factors combined to produce surrender. According to this analysis, atomic bombs provided psychological shock that broke illusion continued resistance was viable. Soviet invasion eliminated strategic option of negotiated peace. Emperor's intervention overruled military faction that couldn't accept surrender. Occupation was accepted because bombs provided narrative preserving honor while accepting defeat. Critical analysis of Japanese decision-making documented in archives revealed that Supreme War Council debate wasn't primarily about whether to surrender, but about what terms were acceptable. Military faction demanded conditions preserving their power and limiting occupation. Civilian faction recognized unconditional surrender was necessary, but needed political cover for accepting it. Atomic bombs provided that cover by creating external justification for surrender that military couldn't refute without advocating national extinction. Japan's War Council response to atomic bomb footage revealed fundamental truths about military decision-making, organizational psychology, and relationship between military necessity and political legitimacy. First truth: organizations resist accepting defeat, even facing overwhelming evidence that continuation is suicidal. Japanese military faction maintained continued resistance was viable even after watching footage of atomic explosion and receiving reports of second bombing. Their worldview, where honor required fighting to death, prevented accepting rational strategic assessment that continuation meant national extinction. Only Emperor's intervention overruled organizational psychology that couldn't accept surrender regardless of circumstances. Second truth: new weapons' psychological impact exceeds their immediate military effect. Atomic bombs killed approximately 200,000 people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Tragic, but comparable to casualties from conventional bombing campaigns that killed similar numbers in Tokyo and other cities. What made atomic bombs decisive wasn't casualties they inflicted, but psychological shock they created. Single bomb destroying entire city demonstrated power that rendered traditional military planning obsolete and forced fundamental reassessment of whether resistance was viable. Third truth: political legitimacy requires narratives that preserve honor while accepting defeat. Japanese military couldn't accept unconditional surrender because admitting conventional military defeat dishonored everything they'd fought for. Atomic bombs provided alternative narrative. Japan wasn't defeated by superior enemies, but by unprecedented technological advancement no nation could counter. This narrative preserved military honor while accepting reality of defeat, making surrender politically viable. Fourth truth: sometimes preventing greater tragedy requires accepting smaller tragedy. Atomic bombs caused tremendous suffering, killing 200,000 people immediately, and more from radiation effects. But invasion of Japan, Operation Downfall, would likely have killed millions through combat casualties and forced civilian resistance military would have demanded. Choosing lesser tragedy over greater tragedy is a morally complex decision that lacks clear answer but may be strategically necessary. Fifth truth: weapons too terrible to use become weapons too powerful to abandon. Atomic bombs demonstrated power so devastating that using them again became nearly unthinkable. But same power that made using them unthinkable made possessing them necessary for deterrence. This paradox, weapons too terrible to use but too important to abandon, defined military strategy for the remainder of century and continues shaping international relations today. Shigenori Togo's journey from dismissing American claims as propaganda to watching footage of mushroom cloud to arguing for immediate surrender represented broader transformation in Japanese understanding about atomic age realities. What began as disbelief, no weapon could destroy entire city, evolved through evidence-based recognition that Americans possessed unprecedented destructive power, requiring fundamental reassessment of whether resistance was rational. The footage screening on August 9, 1945, captured moment when Japanese leadership confronted evidence that warfare had changed fundamentally. The mushroom cloud rising beyond camera frame represented power that rendered traditional military planning obsolete. The debate that followed revealed divide between military faction that couldn't accept defeat regardless of circumstances and civilian faction that recognized survival required accepting reality no matter how painful. War Minister Anami's suicide hours before surrender broadcast represented military worldview's inability to accept defeat. His final message, "I believe in Japan's sacred indestructibility," captured faith that transcended rational strategic assessment. But his suicide also represented recognition that Emperor had decided and that military must accept Emperor's judgment even when they believed it was wrong. Emperor Hirohito's decision to cite atomic bombs explicitly in surrender broadcast was calculated political choice, providing cover for defeat. By emphasizing that bombs represented unprecedented threat requiring surrender to prevent Japanese extinction, Emperor created narrative that made surrender compatible with loyalty and honor. This narrative enabled Japanese population to accept occupation while maintaining they were following Emperor's command to preserve Japanese people. The 40-year journey from watching atomic bomb footage in 1945 to publishing memoir in 1985 gave Togo perspective about bombs' historical significance. Looking back, he could acknowledge that bombs, despite causing tremendous suffering, had likely saved lives by preventing invasion. He could recognize that sometimes preventing greater tragedy requires accepting smaller tragedy. And he could testify that bombs had provided political cover, enabling surrender that preserved Japanese people even though it cost military its honor. What Japan's War Council said when they saw atomic bomb footage was divided between military faction, insisting footage was propaganda or continuation was still viable, and civilian faction recognizing bombs required immediate surrender. But more significant than what they said was what footage revealed about organizational psychology, preventing rational strategic assessment, and about how political legitimacy requires narratives preserving honor while accepting defeat. The mushroom cloud footage from Hiroshima represented more than documentary evidence of atomic bombs' destructive power. It represented a moment when warfare entered an era where weapons existed that could annihilate nations. The debate that followed screening revealed that recognizing this reality and accepting its implications required overcoming organizational psychology, cultural values, and personal honor, barriers so powerful that only emperor's intervention could breach them. 40 years later, when survivors like Shigenori Togo reflected on those August days, they understood that atomic bombs had been decisive not primarily through destruction they caused, but through psychological transformation they forced. Weapons demonstrating power to annihilate nations made continued resistance obviously suicidal in ways conventional defeats hadn't. This psychological transformation, from believing honor required death to recognizing survival required surrender, was atomic bombs' true impact on Japan's decision to end war.